I am Eugenio Bogenriet, Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile, and this piece that I'm presenting today is with my co-authors there. This is about how we trends in commodity prices. Standard models to understand the behavior of commodity prices usually are stationary models. So then there is this question: if you look at the data, very often, most often, you can see that there are trends, maybe short trends, upward trends, downward trends, but you see trends, and then the question is, how do you deal with that? Because the trend should interact with incentives for speculation, for example. Okay, so now there is a vast literature on the theory and mostly in the economics of how to deal with this, with the personal science. Most popular of all is the first one. That's very standard. That's convenient because you have a stationary model usually. Now, another approach, which is very popular, is you use prior detrending. You have this stationary model, you have non-stationary data, so you apply some filter to detrend the data and to fit it to the detrended model, to the stationary model. Of course, that is somewhat dangerous to do, because in real life the trend is present. So if anybody is buying or selling stocks of this commodity, they are going to face the trend. So that's a treacherous thing to do. Another approach is assuming linear or non-linear Euler equations. The Euler equations, the intertemporal Euler equations. If you log-linearize the Euler equations, then they become linear, and then the trend becomes a linear trend, and that's straightforward to deal with. Right? And then another approach is just ignore the possible interaction of the trend, of any trend, and the economic incentives. See, this is also a very popular approach. People just estimate, they may estimate jointly the trend along with other behavioral parameters, and the trend is just treated as something exogenous, that has nothing to do with the interpretation of what are the parameters that you are really estimating. And then another approach is, in your regression, you may assume independent errors. Why? Because that's extremely convenient for the econometric theory, right? So, okay. Now, as an overview of what you see in commodity prices, this quote from Angus Deacon and Guy Leroy, although it's rather old quote, really reflects most of what is happening in the understanding of commodity prices currently in the literature. They say that on the long run, if there is any trend, the trend is really small. The trend would be really small. So why don't we just neglect it? I mean, it's just a small number compared to the variation. The commodity prices can vary 50%, 30% per year, like considering what's happening now, for example. And if the trend is, if the average trend is say -3% per year or something like that, it's just not important, right? And then they also say it's possible to see, if you look at the data, it's possible to see upward or downward trends over long periods of time. Okay, now these are price units. This is just, we look to the price units, real prices for cotton and maize that we use to make our point, and you can see that Deaton and Rob, they have a nice interpretation of what's going on. Maybe there is an upward trend here, followed by a downward trend here, maybe for 3 or 5 years, another upward trend, etc. So then, yeah, there are short run trends, and over the very long run, yeah, there is a downward trend, which is not very pronounced. It's not a big number. I mean, this could look big because of the scale, of the horizontal axis, but it's just it's a small number in percentage. Much the same with mice. Okay. Now there is another observation which is a common thought in this literature on commodity prices, which is basically that. And this observation is nicely written in this quote by Angus Deaton in the Journal of Economics Perspectives. Basically, he's saying, if you look at the autoregression, say the price at t+1 as a function of the price at period t, you don't see anything much interesting, except that you have just a straight line, a linear autoregression. In other words, now the question is, does the data support this hypothesis of the linear autoregression? Well, looks like yes, right? This is on the horizontal axis is the price of cotton in period t. These are yearly annual prices. Price of cotton in time t, or is the vertical axis is price of cotton in time t+1. So this is just the autoregression, the data. And you can see this is the 45-degree line. Yeah, there is some variation, but very much, very much is like an ideal data set to fit maybe an IID model with a, and if there is any trend here, it's just so small, it's not important. And so Deaton has a point in the linear autoregression, and then you look at mice, more or less the same. Data, of course, there is variability, except for these 2 points here, which are you think that these points are outliers. I will talk about those 2 points here. But other than those, there is variation very much concentrated around the 45-degree line. And then, based on this observation, it's very straightforward to conclude that, well, we should estimate a linear autoregression, and possibly we could find, for example, evidence of unit roots, for example, like maybe the coefficient on the current time is 1 or close to 1. And actually, if you do that, that's exactly what you find. For many of these commodities, you run unit root tests, and you cannot reject the unit root hypothesis using standard tests. Now these are the same pictures as before, but now on the vertical axis, instead of price at time t+1, we measure returns, the percentage variation of price between t and t+1. So now you see for cotton, very much the same story we saw before. The variation could be positive, negative, all over for basically for any level of trending of the price, we call it the trending price, and in the mean in the long run looks just 0, unpredictable price changes, and this is the histogram of the prices. Now what about maize? Oops. Maize, that's the same story. Variation, positive, negative. On average, is about 0. Now, a preliminary step, a naive preliminary step. What about if we estimate this very small secular trend that we saw on the data, and just determine the data, determine the prices using deterministic secular trend, and we do that without any model yet, without nothing else but just standard log prices as a function of time, as a linear function of time, and then we determine, does it make a difference in terms of the variation? Oops, maybe yes. See, now the horizontal axis, this is cotton. Horizontal axis is the first, is the same as the previous one, prices, current price, but detrended. Now we reorder now we use detrended prices, and now if you order the return according to detrended prices, vertical axis is the same as before. This is just the return, not of detrended, but 5 minutes. Yeah, but it's just the actual return observed in the data, and you see. For low determined prices, yeah, still we have this nice variation, positive and negative, but for highly enough determined price, the variation is negative. So here then we see evidence of nonlinearity. If you do determined prices and pretty much the same as with maize. Now this naive determined we did is complex because the trend might interact with the economic variables, and we also don't know how to calculate the asymptotic standard errors. This is not just the old OLS equation that where we assume like the errors are IAD or white noise. We don't know that. So we published this paper last year. We published in the American Journal of Agricultural Economics, basically use this prior detrending, and we were not able to come up with expressions for the asymptotic standard errors. Now for the very first time in this paper, we introduce a model. We have a storage model here, very standard speculation storage model, and we don't need to go through the details in 3 minutes, but basically, the model comes up to this autoregression. The expected price ET of PT plus 1 as of time t. The expectation for the price in t plus 1 is a nonlinear model with a threshold, but the threshold depends on time. Lambda is a trend parameter to the power 2. And so it's an autoregression, yes, but it's a nonlinear autoregression. Now, some technicalities here. We have that this model maps to a stationary model, which is equivalent to the model with trending data, but in the stationary model, we are able to do our econometrics. I mean, the proofs, the econometric theory. We do econometric theory here. Now we simulate this model. And this is just simulation using a very widely used example in the literature, in this literature. And this is the heuristic model, trending price, and the vertical line, in the vertical axis, the return. Yeah, you see a lot of variation that are around 0. Now, if you detrend prices, the situation changes. See? Very different. Now it's looking now more similar to what we saw in the price for cotton and maize. Now we have an empirical estimation. We propose a new estimation procedure where we estimate the trend and a threshold parameter T star and the interest rate simultaneously. So we avoid this problem of prior detrending. We don't need to go through this. This is just the formulas for the asymptotic standard errors. Now these are our estimates for cotton and maize. For cotton, this is the estimate for 1 plus R, is the interest rate here. And you see very large standard errors. For cotton, very large compared to the interest rate, 2.8% versus 20% of standard error, crazy large. And much the same with maize, the same kind of problem. This is not a new problem. Basically, this literature is very difficult to estimate interest rates. But look at this. Using the delta method, we estimate 1 plus R times T star. And then the standard error goes down dramatically. So very precise estimation of 1 plus R T star as compared to the estimation for 1 plus R T star. What's the reason? The reason is that asymptotically, there is the covariance between these two estimators is negative, and it turns out to be very negative. So that using the delta method, we make use of that negative correlation, and that's why we have this nice estimation. Now here, this is just comparing the two trends estimated the red line is using our estimator, the blue line is just preliminary detrending. And for example, for cotton, this is a very nice picture because it shows that if you do preliminary detrending, which I would say is the most popular way to estimate this kind of, to do econometrics with commodity prices, you estimate a trend which is lower, the blue is lower than the steeper trend that you estimate using this one-step procedure that we're using in this paper. Why lower? Well, it's because if you need to fit each data point, it's fine. It's done.
Yeah, we can do it now. And 15 minutes are over, so let's go to
15 minutes ago, yeah. So I finish with this.
yeah, you can go.
Okay, so estimation, if you need to fit every data point to the same trend. See here you have upward trend, here you have downward trend, then your estimation is going to be flattened than if you just fit the trend to those periods where you have the downward trend being active, and that's a jump process. And okay, I ran out of time. This is just our final estimate. This is, yeah, okay. 1 minute, yeah, and that's it. These are the two. One regime. In one regime, you have that the prices are increasing expectation at the interest rate. Those are the green dots here. This green and the red are the prediction of prices for next period. So here you see that when prices are expected to increase at the interest rate, that's green. That's different when prices are going down following this trend. And then what happens here? What is the idea here? The basic idea is that you pick any price scheme. See, for example, this one 1.4 or this region of prices. Some prices are expected to go up from 1.4. Some prices are expected to go down from 1.4. So no wonder, right? In the average, they cancel out, and then you see a linear autoregression, which hovers very nicely, but it's just an artifact of a neglected trend. The trend is neglected because it's very small, but the trend turns out to be crucial in order to identify if you expect the price to go up or down. So that's
Yes, thank you so much.
okay. Thank you.
We'll just open the floor for questions now. So I think I'm supposed to be the discussion on all, but there's anything formless going on here, like there's no discussion really has. No, I just have some questions to ask. Very technical paper, actually, where I was struggling with, but thank you for a very nice, easy going presentation. I have a lot. My question is that, like, you know, to my mind, always price to some extent unpredictable because of that stochastic process, right? So when you refer, like, from what I read in introduction, you said it showed that, like, without taking into account the trend, and it's unpredictable. So what does it actually mean? To which extent it's predictable or unpredictable?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course, that's a very nice point. What you're saying is that, look, there is uncertainty here, of course. Yeah. So in terms of the return, for example, of the forward return in expected price variation, we don't expect the price to be exactly on the expectation. That's another way of saying that there is variation. So there is a mean here, of course. We don't expect the price to be exactly equal to the mean, but the mean is an attractor. And this mean, which is an attractor, very good question, because then I get to talk about this. See that I couldn't present. See, this red line is an upper from this region to the left. This is an upper bound for the expectation, and actually the expectation, this is just horizontal line is return price, vertical line is the return, the percentage change in price from period T to period T+1. So then in the first part of our data, we have that the expectation is zero. The expectation of price change is zero. Of course, that doesn't imply that the price change is zero, just the expectation, right? So here we see what we were talking about, prices up and down, variation, but in average, very close to zero actually. And then from here on, this red line here, the main curve here, is our conditional expectation, but now in this second region, in the region where we expect the trend to be important, this lambda to the t thing. And then you see the expectation is going down along this curve, and you see that actually not most, but all of the data variations are negative. They are, some of them are close to the expectations, some of them are not so close, but they are not negative. And this is the meaning, this is what's going on. Of course, the data variation is not equal to the expectation, but in this picture for cutoff, it's very close.
So you mean what we try to do is to retrain that only that part where the older data points belong to.
Okay, no, we don't do that. No. We do an estimation using every data point. Let me go to the estimation piece here. Here, we use every point, but to estimate simultaneously the trend is represented by lambda here. The trend, the parameter P star, this is just a location parameter, and the interest rate represented by gamma, 1% interest rate. So we use all of the data points to estimate all three parameters. Not parametric, but this is not parametric because our estimation here does not depend on what's the specification of the demand curve or what is the distribution of the shocks of that. But we estimate all three parameters simultaneously using all of the points. But then, since we have this nonlinear equation here, the trend is only affecting the data in this piece of the regression. So you do two things. You use all of the data to do the estimation, and then when part of the data, you reveal the trend. Another way of saying this is that the trend is partially latent in the data. Why is latent? Why is partially latent? Well, very simple. Here we have that the commodity prices are interacting, the commodity markets are interacting with the financial market. So say I tell you, look, the long run expectation of the wheat price is -%. Wheat price is going down by 2% per year on average, of course. And then you are trying to make a decision. Should I invest in Amazon stocks or should I buy wheat? Well, something has to happen with the wheat market so that if the market then the return should be the same. Say if they have the same risk. So then you have this interaction with the financial market. The financial market tells you that whenever you have positive stocks, meaning whenever there is active speculation, the expected interest rate of the wheat market has to be the same as the financial market. It's just unavoidable. So then when the trend shows up, it's only some of the times. See, and in the rest of the times when the speculation is active, the trend is a latent variable. It's already there, it's all time there in the model, but shows up only when you have stockouts.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
If there's no answer, then we've got to leave contact and later because we have to move on to the next presentation. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oopsie. I didn't change the date. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to my presentation. So today we talk about the county level USD growth progress and condition data, the potential to use machine learning to predict it and education for commodity market surprise. So this is a collaboration between me, two other co-authors from University of Bonn and Professor Michel Rowe from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Let's go. So the motivation of this is such from two main facts. The first one is, unexpected weather development can have significant impact on the expected crop size and thereby the price for the growing season. And because of that, the second fact would be news regarding the development of crops is a crucial price of determinant of agriculture market. So I have here, for example, a screenshot where you show on the webpage of the Farm Doc articles, there's weather and price together in one place. So that's very relevant. So when we talk about crop progress and condition, we cannot avoid thinking about USDA NAS crop progress and condition reports. Hereafter, I call CPCRs. So the most comprehensive and frequently updated report of US-wide crop progress and condition ranging from April to November. So some example here, some screenshot I just took today, and that's how, the media, if you go on the media during this time of the year, you see a lot of article if you put in the Google search crop progress and conditions. It's very closely watched by the media, but more than that, if you go on Twitter, for example, you also see a lot of tweets trying to say what is the price implication of the result of the report on commodity market like wheat, corn, and soybeans, and so on. So it seems that the CPC are still very closely watched by the market if you look at social media. However, in our literature commodity price analysis, surprisingly, there's not much going on with this report. And so we have lots of paper about other types of report, like the waste, the crop production, trend stock, and so, but not much about our crop progress and condition. Especially this, whenever there's one, then the finding is not really optimistic. For example, this paper from Yin, Chen, and Dorfman very recently said that market impact of the CPCR has even decayed to insignificant since 1990s. So here, for example, I took a screenshot of the ebook of Professor Midi Mallory. She used to be in Illinois, and it say that crop condition reports only hit the market or like move market significantly. There is a very large deviation from the normal condition that's necessary for the crop development. And then I found this one on Twitter also saying that basically crop condition rating is like the most useless USDA report. It's a waste of money. So why there is this, like contradicting between the media and what we found in the literature? There's two potential reasons for that. So the first one is the agriculture information services. So nowadays, with a lot of satellite image, private weather forecasts, big data analysis, every PhD student in our field is learning something about machine learning. These things make the crop conditions more predictable, publicly predictable. And that's why properly a lot of relevant information about a crop condition is already predicted by the market participant before the report coming out. And that's why there's no significant impact. Now, so if you go on Google search there and put like single keyword in, it gives you 150 million such like result within, I don't know, half a second or something. So that's the question is how much surprise still can the report still bring to the market. And the second possible reason is that before 2015, the structure of the CPCRs quite challenging for traditional statistical inference like econometrics, for example, why I will show in the next slide. like this is the structure of the traditional progress and condition report. So you have 5 categories, and every category like if you sum up like a row, then it must be 100%, and it's like that for 18 states. So now what it's hard because it's this ordinal structure now will make it hard to how to construct a single dependent variable for statistical inference. The next thing is that because it's highly spatially aggregated, whereas as you may imagine, the weather or climate or agronomic conditions, which is determined of crop conditions, very highly heterogeneous across space. So if you want to do something about that, it's required that you ultimately have to aggregate. Either you aggregate, the weather and lose information, or you disaggregate the crop condition, which is not possible because the report production process is highly confidential by us. No? So the estimation based on these processes not very efficient and may subject to bias. So the opportunity come when starting from I think last year, 2021 was the first year they released the new CPT data presentation for the year starting from 2015, and now you have a much finer grid of county level data, so to say. No? So they released the 9 kilometer raster data per crop week. That's much finer. And instead of the ordinal category, they introduce an index ranging from 1 to 5 for, very poor. If it's 1, then all the crop is very poor. If it's 5, then all the crop is excellent. And it's like that. So this gives us some opportunity to explore this data set and see if we could improve our prediction. And ask the question, would this be more helpful? And I think it's a very nice question to ask, because if the USDA invested a lot of money to develop this data set, certainly they want to know if it's helpful to some extent or not. So our objective is, with this data set, we try to tease out a surprise component of the crop condition data using this gridded layer. No? And then by then we ask the question, do the reports still bring new information to the market? And the second step, we assess the market impact of this surprise component, the impact on price returns, forward-looking volatility, and so on. Let's have a quick look at the data. So like I said, because the new data sets already released for the year starting from 2015 onwards, so that's up to now we have 7.5 years, I would say. And the resolution of the grid is 9 kilometer. For weather, we have 4 × 4 kilometer. As another possible and important control for the market forward-looking expectation, we have weather forecast from the North American Mesopotamia scale. This is 12 × 10 kilometers. It's very big data set. I have to say that's kind of one of the biggest challenge that we're going through right now. And market data are very traditional. I mean, we use corn for the moment, focus on corn and soybean, new crop futures, prices, and eyeball. So imply volatility. Empirical strategy will be done in 3 steps. So the first step, like I said, to predict the CPCR using the weather realization, weather forecast, and all previous data of the CPCRs. In the second step, we assess the size and future price impact of this surprise component, which is the forecast error of the first step, and compare it with the non-surprise component. And then for the third step, we assess also the relationship among weather forecast error, the surprise component, and get forward-looking volatilities, how much volatility the market will perceive having this price, how much would it hit the confidence of the market, so to say. Unfortunately, like I said, the data is huge, and we somehow face a lot of constraint in terms of hardware, also storage Thank you. So right now we only have this to tell you something, not even completed, so ignore that and I tell you the next conference. So this is basically what the first step doing. On the left-hand side is all the predictor, and we try to tease out the predicted versus non-predicted component of the report on the left-hand side. And at this stage, you may ask, okay, but how, if you predict something, can you claim that is actually valid for as a surprise of a report? How do you know that? So let me go a little bit to the step 2. So this is the thing. You can do the regression with the forecast error in one, and the other one is the predicted value. So this beta 2 of the predicted value of the crop condition theory, in theory, if the market already predicted before, it should be insignificantly different from 0. And this is our, how to say, placeable test for the surprise. As long as you have the 0 correlation over there, you can claim that it's surprise to the market. So that's the idea. And this is some preliminary result. So we have like, you know what I mean when I said big data, we have like on average 1.9 million observation the pixel week per year after removing all the non-crop pixels. And this is the very first run of machine learning where we do, and you see that already we could achieve pretty low standard error. Sorry, forecast error. So the mean forecast error is somewhere around like 0.2. And if you think about the average of the crop condition range is range from 1 to 5. So 0.2, if you think about it heuristically, then it's not even enough to move you to the next category. So I think that is very, very optimistic that we achieve some good prediction. And on the other side, you also can see that we have some kind of relevant, which is the relevant predictor for our models. And the year fixed expect surprisingly still capture a lot of prediction powers. This is because, like, you know, we have not introduced a lot of predictor inside, and there may be something like level of nitrogen application, some kind of climatic phenomenon of the years like El Nino, La Nina, something in there. So it still capture a lot of prediction. Yeah, so that is for now. And our message at this step is that using machine learning approach is somehow a way to go to predict county-level crop condition with high accuracy. And we expect that in the next step, once we're done with, you know, aggregating it back, then we can show that this surprise component is actually what moves the market and not the predicted value. And moving forward, you know, like this thing, I think very potential for a lot of application rather than just the surprise component. We could think about, you know, in-season price forecasting, but we also can think about the implication for crop insurance programs. And the thing you could do is try to check, you block these different set of predictors in and check again the correlation and see, okay, what is actually in the mind of market participants, what enter their information set so that they form the market expectation. So I think there's a lot of potential with this later. Thank you very much for your attention. That's it. Open to questions and discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder, I mean, this regression, can you show the regressions again, please?
Yeah, I mean, just a very simple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. The thing is that if you know that for example, the surprise component is that the harvest is going to be better than expected, or worse than expected. In the actual market, you would see changes in the speculation in storage, and then many things happen. But one very clear lesson from that literature is that your model is non-linear. You have no linearity. because of the storage decisions.
Yeah.
People react, right?
Yeah, that may well be.
To the news, and then I wonder, you see, with these linear equations, what would you be capturing?
Yeah, I mean, this is again just like a simple way of thinking how we do that. But of course, we could also try with different specification, like nonlinear specification.
I would say
think
try,
so.
try with a framework, with a theoretical framework.
Mhm,
There is a vast literature how to use it with news
mhm,
on speculation
mhm.
and the storage model with news and then you will have a structure for your estimation. You will understand what is the behavior of your residuals, for example, and then is the questions are like, is it appropriate to do a t-test or something else?
Mhm.
What is the right way to calculate standard deviations, so on and so forth.
Yeah, which is like my favorite way to kind of think about theoretical model. Thank you very much. I have not had time to go to that step, but I look forward to that. Okay.
You might also want to control for days on which, other USDA reports are released to make sure that you're not accounting the surprise element from the CPCR reports, which
Yeah.
might actually be because of other USDA reports.
That's the right point. I mean, that was what I was doing before coming here for the conference, actually, but still not finished yet. Thank you, Roya. Any other thing? Okay, then I think I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'll be discussing the paper on information rigidities in USDA forecast. This is a joint work with Dr. Michael Echemian at the University of Georgia. Before going into the technicalities, I'll provide a brief exact summary. So there are several previous research studies in the agriculture literature which finds that USDA forecasts inefficient because whatever the revisions that USDA makes, those are correlated with the past revisions. And majority of these studies conclude that this is because of smoothing. Smoothing is a phenomenon wherein past revisions are correlated, but there's much more to smoothing. Now, agricultural economics only considers correlated forecast revisions as smoothing. However, the economics literature considers smoothing to be a strategic phenomena where the where the forecaster is knowingly trying to underestimate their forecasts. Now the question is, why would the forecaster want to underestimate their forecast? It could be because of reputational purposes, because they don't want to show to the market that they're making large revisions. They want to make sure that they're making small revisions, even if they have to make a larger revision towards the end. So it could be either because of reputational purposes, or it could be because, they don't want to send unexpected signals to the market, because, if they're showing a very large revision, that might create a lot of surprise in the market. And as a result, there might be a lot of volatility in the futures markets. So it could be because of different reasons. However, in this paper, I'm seeing that, okay, USDA forecast errors are correlated, but what is the reason that is resulting in inefficiency in these forecasts? So my paper shows that it is not strategic smoothing, that is, USDA forecasters are not knowingly underestimating these forecasts. It is because of information rigidities, that is, incomplete access to information. USDA forecasts are correlated, forecast revisions are correlated because USDA does not have complete access to information. If USDA is able to get more access to information, they'll be able to make more efficient forecasts. And as a result, more efficient forecasts will improve efficiency across the supply chain. Now, the question is, why does USDA provide these forecasts? Well, markets are characterized with volatile prices, volatile supply. This could be because of weather fluctuations, crop diseases, pest infestations, and hundreds of other reasons. Now, to make sure that some of the uncertainty because of these factors is reduced, USDA provides these forecasts to the market to resolve some of this information uncertainty. Within the USDA, National Agricultural Statistics Service provides yield and production forecasts for major domestic commodities, for example, corn, soybeans, and wheat. And to provide these estimates, NAS conducts surveys of over 100,000 farmers across 75,000 farmlands across the US. And once they collect all these surveys, they set up a meeting wherein individual NAS statisticians come up with these forecasts. And in a general meeting, in a consensus meeting, they combine all of these different NAS individual forecasts and come up with one consensus forecast that is published. Now, markets have shown that, literature has shown that markets react to the information contained in these reports. How we know that? Because information volatility reacts, because implied volatility falls immediately after the publication of these reports. Now, implied volatility is a measure of uncertainty in futures market. The publication implied volatility decreases. That means these reports are able to provide some information which was not available to market participants. The majority of these studies also find that USDA forecasts depart from a condition of rationality in which forecasters are able to use all the information available. Now, talking about rationality, Nordhaus in his seminal paper in 1987 has conceptualized that forecasts are efficient if one, forecast errors are uncorrelated with the previous forecast errors, and two, if forecast revisions so uncorrelated with the previous forecast revisions. If these two conditions are satisfied, we say that USDA forecasts are weakly efficient. Now, most of the ag-econ literature focuses on the condition in which forecast revisions are independent of or not of previous forecast revisions. Now, these studies show that yes, forecast revisions are correlated with previous forecast revisions, and as a result, there is smoothing in these forecasts. For example, Azengelina Massa in the 2006, 13, and 2017 paper show that corn and soybean production forecasts are smoothed. However, as I said previously, there's a discrepancy in the definition of smoothing in the agricultural economics and economics literature. So what information rigidities? Information rigidities means incomplete access to information. This was a term coined in a seminal paper by Koebion and Kornichenko in 2015. And the paper proposed two models of information rigidities. The first model is sticky information models. In sticky information model, information rigidity is occurring because agents update the information set, but they do not update it regularly. Why they do not update the information set regularly is because of the costs of acquiring information is too high that they're not able to get access to latest information to update their forecasts. And that delay in updating the information sets results in information frictions, and that is the probability of not acquiring new information. The other set of models is noisy information models. In these models, agents update the information sets frequently, but they do so via signal extraction problem. So, for example, USDA forecasters are capturing these. So they're making surveys, they're making forecasts based on the surveys that they collect from farmers. Now, it might be that these surveys have a lot of noise, but USDA forecasters are not able to efficiently filter out noise from the information to update their forecasts regularly. So it could be because of noise that they do not have access to complete information. So if information rigidities are present, then USDA forecast errors and revisions should be consistent with sticky information and noisy information models. So what are our contributions for this paper? We make two important contributions. First is we harmonize the difference of in the definition of smoothing in the agricultural economics and economics literature. And for this paper, we are following the definition of smoothing, which is defined by the Taylor macroeconomic literature. That is a strategic phenomenon where the forecasters are knowingly underestimating their forecasts. In the second contribution is that this is the very first study to look at information rigidities in agricultural economics forecasts. From where do we get our data? We get our data from the, in this paper, we are looking at the production and yield forecasts for corn, soybean, and wheat from 1985 to 2019. And this data set is maintained by the Cornell University Library. Specifically for corn and soybean, the forecast cycle runs from August to November, with the final estimates being available in January. And for wheat, the forecast cycle runs from May through August, with the final numbers available in September after 1992. Before 1992, the numbers are also available in the January reports. So all in all, we have 3 commodities. For each commodity, we have 5 observations for 1 marketing year, and we have a total of, I guess, 35 marketing years in our analysis. This is the seed production trend for corn, soybeans, and wheat. All in all, for corn and soybean, we see an increasing trend. And to make sure that our price series are stationary, we take the log terms. So we log our production as well as seed data set. And to be consistent in an analysis, we also do that for winter wheat production and yield. So now I'll get into the methodology. So we'll have a lot of equations. I'll try to simplify as much as I could. So for example, for corn, we have, this is the forecasting cycle for corn and soybeans. It's the same. The first forecast is available in August, September, followed by October and November. And the final estimates are available in January. So January estimates, January forecast is the final realization, which we are considering. And the forecast error for the first, the forecast error for August will be the final realization, which is the forecast made in January minus the forecast made in August. And forecast revision in September would be the forecast made in September minus the forecast made in the last month, which is August. So that's how we are calculating the forecast errors and forecast revisions. Now, in an ideal world, when there is no information frictions, everything is perfect, we would expect that the forecaster has complete access to information, that USDA has all the information available to make the forecast. And as a result, any errors. So here in the forecast error, this forecast error, which is the difference between the realization minus what is expected at that time, that is the forecast, which is the ideal forecast, would be completely random and unpredictable. So this is the full information ration expectations error. This error is only made if USDA has access to full information. However, in a real world, we do not have the full information ration expectation. We only have the forecast because there are a lot of information frictions or maybe strategic smoothing. And as a result, it results in some forecast error, which is different from the full information rational expectation error. So if VT, that is the full information rational expectation error, is as forecast error, then that means the forecast, that would mean that USDA forecasts are rational and as a result, efficient. So what is strategic smoothing? Now, this is the first equation is the equation that has been used in the agricultural economics literature, wherein they study forecast revisions as a function of lagged forecast revisions. And if beta 1 is significant in this equation, that would mean that forecast revisions are correlated with past forecast revisions, and as a result, they would be inefficient. Now, this source of inefficiency could be coming from 2 different sources. It could be because of strategic smoothing, or it could be because of information rigidities. However, agricultural economics literature just focuses on this equation and includes this as smoothing, which may or may not be true. Now, under what circumstances would a forecaster do strategic smoothing? Well, when a forecaster is strategically smoothing, in that case, they're trying to minimize forecast errors, which is the goal of a forecaster, but they're also trying to minimize forecast revisions to make sure that, they are making minimum revisions for reputational purposes or to prevent any sudden price impact or market reactions. So in this, they are facing a dual minimization problem where they're trying to minimize both forecast errors and forecast revisions. And the rate at which they are minimizing forecast revisions is given by alpha. So if alpha is 0, then they're just minimizing forecast errors and not minimizing forecast revisions. And as a result, they're not strategically smoothing. So if we simplify this equation, get a very simple expression where forecast error is a where forecast error is a function of forecast revision and lagged forecast revision. Now, in this equation, so if we just run a simple linear regression of forecast errors as a function of current year forecast revision and lagged forecast revisions, we can test for smoothing. However, here the error term is correlated with the time t set. Why it is correlated? Because the forecasters might be leaving some information in making their forecast because they're trying to knowingly underestimate the forecast. So they have some information which they're not considering while making that forecast. And that information resides in the error term. So it will result in the problem of indigeneity. Also note that the sign on current year forecast revision is negative, while the sign on lag forecast revision is positive. Why is this happening? This is happening because of the intertemporal trade-off, which basically means that if USD forecasters are smoothing today, that is, they're trying to underestimate today, then they'll have to make a very large adjustment in the next period. So, for example, we are considering a very simple world where we have only 3 periods. First period is the beginning period. Third period is the final period, and second period is the period in which the forecaster is making some forecast. Now, the USD forecaster, they start with 10 bushels and they're making the final forecast of 20 bushels in period 3. So that is the final realization. However, in period 2, they may decide that instead of actually forecasting 15 bushels based on the information that they have, they're forecasting 12 bushels. So they're underestimating by 3 bushels. And as a result, tomorrow, that is the final period, they'll have to make a final adjustment of 7 bushels, because now they have to move from 12 bushels to 20 bushels instead of moving from 15 bushels to 20 bushels. So if they're smoothing today, then they have to make a higher adjustment tomorrow. That's why the signs are like that. And as I said, the error term is correlated with the time key information set, so that results in endogeneity. As a result, we are using the instrumental variables regression, where the instrument is the change in log nearby futures closing price 1 day before the USD reports are released. We also try to do a sensitivity analysis wherein we are changing the instrument from 1 day to 2 days, 3 days, up to 15 days before the USD reports are released. However, our results remain consistent and no change. Now to explain how our instrument satisfies the exclusion restriction criteria. So we are using the lag closing price as an instrument, and we are instrumenting for the current period forecast revision. So now the lag closing price is available at time t minus 1. So it can inform the current revision, but current revision is known at time t, so it cannot inform the lag closing price, futures price closing price. Also, the forecast error is the difference between the realization and the forecast made at that time. So realization is made way ahead in the future, so it cannot impact the closing price at time t minus 1. So the only way that lag closing price can impact futures prices is by the current period forecast, that is FT, which is via this channel of current year forecast revision. So that was about smoothing. Now talking about information rigidities. Okay, so I'll just skip the methodology, but I'll move to the. So to test for forecast, to test for information rigidities, we just need to run one regression. The regression is forecast error today at the forecast error at time t as a function of forecast revisions. If the beta coefficient is significant, then that means that there are information rigidities present. Now, this information rigidities could be either coming from sticky information models or noisy information models, wherein we can use the beta we estimate from the regression to calculate lambda, which is the probability of not updating the information set. Or we can use beta to calculate G, which is from the noisy information world, which is how much the weight is USDA placing on new information. So basically, to test for our results, if we run a regression of forecast error on current period forecast revisions and lag period forecast revisions, and we get signs where the current period forecast revision is negative and the sign on the lag forecast revision is positive, then that means smoothing is present. And so as we can see, so this is these are the results for smoothing in corn soybean wheat production errors. We can see that the contemporaneous forecast revisions are positive, where they should have been negative to be consistent with smoothing. And similarly, the lag revisions are negative, where they should have been positive to be consistent with smoothing. For wheat, we do know that current period forecast revisions are positive, but the lag revisions are also positive. But the lag revisions are statistically insignificant, so we fail to conclude any evidence of strategic smoothing in production forecasts. And the results are similar. All contemporaneous revisions are positive and lag revisions are negative, which is opposite to what should have been observed if there was any strategic smoothing. these are the information rigidity. I'm not presenting the tables here, but our results are consistent with information rigidities, which means that any inefficiencies could be either because of sticky information or noisy information. All in all, the USDA is able to learn much more when it moves towards the end of the forecasting cycle. And it's able to update same information set almost across all commodities within 1 to 2 months. However, for wheat, at least in the initial period, specifically in June and July, it updates its information set almost every 3 months. This is how much weight is USDA placing on new information. Well, as it moves ahead towards the marketing cycle, it's able to place as high as 80% weight on new information and 20% weight on past information. So it's as the crop cycle progresses and more information is available, it is able to update the information set and make more efficient forecasts. So to conclude, our results indicate that USDA forecasters may be acting rationally, but they lack access to full information. So have they had access to full information, they would be making more efficient forecasts. All in all, we believe that by making investments in remote sensing technology or using latest data, USDA may be able to improve the efficiency of their forecasts, which will help them in improving efficiency across the supply chain. Thank you. Any questions?
Can you maybe talk about your instrument again? You're basically saying that like, the lag closing price, like whatever's happening with these revisions can't feed back. So couldn't people like anticipate the revisions? Like, is that like a violation of the exclusion?
People could anticipate revisions, but we are like, so our instrument is the lag closing price, and we are using lag closing price 1 day before the USDA reports are released to up till 15 days before the USDA reports are released. And we also tried 30 days before the USDA reports are released, because USDA might be considering that information when they're making these forecasts, because after some time USDA reports go into lock-in before they're released to the market, to the public. So up to 30 days before these reports, the lag closing price, our results remain statistically significant. There's no change. Even the coefficients are very close to each other.
And the strength of that instrument is like just as strong.
It is strong.
30 days before as you.
Yes, it is just as strong, and that's why we are like in the paper. Our headline results are 1 day before, but the instrument is just as strong.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Somebody has their flash drive here, so like
Yeah,
before you forget.
yeah, thanks.
Hi, I'm Rabia Chandio, and I'm a PhD candidate at the Ohio State University. This is a project that is being advised by Dr. Ani Kachova. And I will be talking about the sources of bias in the USDA international baseline projections. So recent literature, some of which Raghav also cited, like they talk about the fact that USDA baseline projections are often biased and their informativeness hence is slightly limited. However, if we want to improve the baselines, just the fact that identifying the error is not enough. That was the first step. The second step has to be identifying the sources of error or like some steps toward trying to minimize it. So for this project specifically, what we try to examine is whether there is unnecessarily grouping together that is happening in the projections for different regions, and does this behavior contributes to the bias that is observed in these projections.
The results, just a quick recap, show that for some crop variable combinations, that unnecessary correlation does contribute to bias. For others, that's not the case. So why would we consider herding as a potential source of bias? That's because herding generally is a phenomena that is observed very often in financial markets. So it's not that much of a leap to consider that when some analysts are making forecasts about financial values, there could be some grouping behavior, some herding that's going on over here as well. The herding can be rational or irrational. It depends on how the private information is regarded. If an agent is using the private information they're utilizing the information that is only available to them and then making the decision to be like, oh yes, the other person seems right to me and yes, I'll do something similar. That is a rational herding behavior. The irrational behavior would be, I have some private information, but maybe the other person has some other information which I don't know about, so I'll just go along with that other person is saying. So that would be ignoring your own private information and then trying to make sure that your projections are grouped together with the other one. Oh, I forgot the time frame.
Okay, it's all yours.
So the behavioral finance research has also identified that the propensity to herd could be a cost minimization function that is informed by individuals. And that is only in the case there are no consequences or actually being wrong if they herd together. And then they're like, oh no, that was really a good strategy, but who cares? So like then the cost minimization strategy would be just to go along with the group behavior is dictating. And why it specifically, one thing that specifically relates to USD as an institution would be the psychology research that says that an institutional's overall vision, overall behavior and expectation also influences how individuals behave within that and how they try to mimic. That's not really a conscious decision, that they try to go along with what they perceive as the organization portraying. So that is why, although there are representatives from over 10 agencies that come together to produce the baseline projections, it could still fall under this category where there's an overall idea that is coming or that is perceived as the USDA's perspective, which is portraying the elections and making them more unnecessarily correlated. So far, the research generally shows that whenever herding occurs in whichever market it occurs, it increases volatility and it may not necessarily increase the information level. So there's also another reason we might want to identify if herding is happening and if that's not really a rational decision in this case. The data we use is the 10-year projection series that are released by USDA every year. So these are very different from the short-term forecasts that Rakib talked about or that WASTI forecasts are. So they are at the country level and they come out every year and they have indicators that span 10 projection horizons. So in 2001, USDA releases figures that tell you what the corn yield is going to be 10 years into the future for China, for Brazil, for Pakistan, and for US itself. And experts from various agencies come together to produce these reports. And in my paper, we're choosing the projections for yield, area harvested, ending stocks, imports, exports, and total consumption for corn, soybeans, and wheat. Since the projections are available from 2002. So quantitatively, how am I quantifying herding? I have projection series for each of the report years. I say that two projection series are herded together when they seem to have very similar trends. That similarity in time series is being measured using the dynamic time plotting algorithm. And I have different series for each crop variable year horizon. For example, I will compare the projection time series for corn yield 2010 for the US and corn yield 2010 with China or Brazil and see whether the trends in these two series are similar. That is how the similarities are computed for each of the crop year variable horizon groups and then their average across the entire period to get a single number of what herding is. Which should just by construction give you an idea that for variables that have a lot of variation, the confidence intervals are just going to be very high. So just like I've skipped the entire algorithm method, the final line here is that we have a distance between two series that is averaged across the entire report year time span, and that the standard errors for that exact single number of distance are computed by using the different distances we have each year. Now, for bias, I want to relate the herding to a potential source of bias. How do I measure bias? The two measures that I use are the root mean squared percentage error and the log error. So both of these can technically be interpreted as the same percentage error, but yeah, we use both of them to see what happens. Now, the third step would be to parametrically check the relationship between herding and bias. For that, we use this regression form. On the left-hand side, we have the log error that comes from the previous slide. On the right-hand side, the first variable is the DTW, dynamic time warping algorithm distance, calculated. And the distance has to be in comparison to a certain country. For us, we use US as the base because these projections come from US, and logically, it would be expected that since US is the center, the correlation is probably happening with the US. We also do that with setting China and Brazil as a base since they are major trade partners and major producers for the crops we're considering, but here I'll just be talking about US. The third variable correlated with base is an indicator variable that takes the value 1 if statistically the DTW distance is indifferent from 0 when I compare it to the US for a certain region. Distance is rational indicator variable that is equal to 1 if my calculated distance is confidence interval also includes the true distance. Now, what is the true distance? The true distance comes from the past data, the past realized data. I use that data for each of the 20 years I have to form a true distance between each of the regions. Historically, using the realized values, were the region's projections actually depicting that trend, or is the trend that was just observed projections, but when the values are realized, that trend does not exist? It will be clear when I show a figure. The last variable is the interaction of correlation and rationality. So that is to say when there is a correlation and when that correlation is rational, we would expect that that should decrease the error that we're observing. This is just like a descriptive graph of the errors for corn yields of various regions. On x-axis, we have the projection horizons. So as we begin in horizon 0, the errors for most series are much lower than when they are later on. That just generally goes on to say that if I'm projecting, or if USD is projecting 1 year into the future, they are more accurate versus when they're projecting like 10 years into the future. And one thing to note here is that US's error is significantly much lower than all the other regions that we're seeing here. So our data has about 35 countries. It's an unbalanced panel, but here I'm depicting the main trade partners and producers for corn. Now, this is the figure that shows our dynamic time warping calculated distance, and it shows the true distance. Let's visit the figure closely. I think the color is a little lighter here, but okay. The blue line shows each region's distance. The region is on x-axis. Okay, when I compare it to the US, the circle here is the distance in the difference in the trends of each region's projections compared to the US, while the triangle is the true difference. So if I see that corn yield of Argentina are 0.00 something like point different compared to the US, when I look at the projections, that means the projections of these two regions are very similar. But when I use historical data to see what the true data difference was, that triangle is very much above this interval as well as this point. So this distance is not. I'm seeing that these projection series of Argentina and US for corn yield across my entire time span are unnecessarily correlated, like they are correlated, and the unnecessarily is actually coming from this triangle, not being in this interval here. So I see they're herded together, and this herding for the specific region is irrational. So this is how we see. The interesting thing to note here is that all of the blue lines are overlapping with 0. That means that when US is my base region, all of the projection series seem to be correlated to the US. So just to like sanity check this, we also check the correlations with all the other regions like Brazil and China, and there is a difference here. So technically what this means is that US is being treated as the center when these projections are being produced. All of the other countries' projections are kind of following the same trend that US is following. For corn yield, this is most clear. For other variables are much large, so we'll go there, but for corn yield, this is most clear. Now, this graph is slightly different than the previous one. There, we were just looking at the DTW distance overall, just the overall average figure that we have. Breakdown by horizon. It's the same broken down by horizon. So here it tells me it's the same country in colors. There you get to see. In the early horizons, the projections are much closer together than in the middle horizons. And then when they're projecting like 8, 9, 10 years into the future, then they're very close together again. That means the projections start with similar trends. They're very, very close. In the middle, they're allowed to use information and differ from each other as the experts region would probably expect. But at the end, they're kind of made to end their trend. If globally, I'm expecting that US is going to have like a 10% increase in yield, then I will say that China, Brazil should all have about 10% increase from where they started. So that the end point and the start points are following the same trend when I look at the intermediate. In the middle, they're allowed to have their whatever variations they have. Corn area harvested, the errors are in terms of like the raw number, they're like slightly higher than yields, but we see another thing. US is at the bottom, US error is very lower, but all the other regions have higher errors. The standard errors here, the confidence interval bars are much, much greater for area harvested. There's a lot more variation in area harvest projections than yields. Yields are historically just very flat, which is why even though all the projections are correlated with the US, we don't necessarily very clearly see whether those projection correlations are rational or irrational. So if this triangle and this circle is very close together, this is considered a rational distance. If this triangle and this circle is like 3 times far apart than that, it's still considered rational because we just generally have very large confidence intervals here. The inverted U-pointer relationship still remains here. Earlier on, the projections are closer. At the end, they're closer. In the middle, they're different. But it's still not it's not on 0 here. We see that they're still different at the start. They're more different in the middle, and they're less different at the end. They're still different. For ending stocks, the errors are much higher. US is at the bottom, but not the absolute bottom. It's kind of like the third highest line, the third lowest line. The variation here, again, much higher. We think harvested graphs. But again, all of the projections for US are correlated with all of the regions. Inverted U relationship remains, but then these projections vary across regions much more than projections for corn yield did. So does this correlation among different regions' projection have something to do with the bias that we observe in these projections? That is the regression we saw above. For the US, all of the regions' projections are correlated with the US. That variable drops. That indicator variable is 1 for all of the data when US is our base region. So we have these 2 variables left. And what's interesting to note is that for yield, we have a negative coefficient. It's small, but we still have a negative coefficient, which means as we increase the distance from the US, the error will decrease. We have a similar negative coefficient for foreign imports, exports, total consumption, ending stocks. For area harvested, it's a positive one. That is because when we go back to this figure, for corn, like for area harvested corn, that's the area harvested is the only variable where we see that the projected distances are much higher than the true distances. For everything else, that's the inverse, that's the opposite. Like the circles are always below triangles for everything else. Here, the circles are always above triangles, which means the projections are more different than the true data is. Which is why we have a positive coefficient on area harvested when we are looking at corn. The similar situation follows in soybeans and wheat as well. For wheat, it's significant as well. The distance being rational and its relation to error is we should be seeing negatives all around here. The only variables where we don't see negatives are, or which are large, are the variables which have very, very high intervals, the confidence intervals. So the distances are called rational because they fall in that very large parts, but the variation actually so among the countries that we still see very high errors in those variables. So that was like the main punchline of the results I have. Just concluding, we see that some crop variables are very much correlated with higher errors when we see they are unnecessarily following or herding together with the US. For a couple, that's not the case, and then that is because those variables have very large variations to begin with. And yeah, so my main conclusion, and this is among the first studies that tries to like go at the source of these errors in the international projections or the baseline projections. The short-term forecasts have been studied much more than the international ones, but the international ones contribute to farm bills, they go into presidential budgeting. So they're also a very important source of information that is used in agricultural policy in the US being informed. That is why studying their error is imperative. That's all.
One quick question is, we know that reported values for most of these variables can be very unreliable. Like ending stocks, for example, reported by each country, even consumption is called disappearing. Whatever disappears, and the question is, can instead of using in order to calculate the actual data, can we infer from information from prices? Because prices are very standardly reported and quoted in markets. People actually pay prices, and I wonder if you can from prices you can make it be straightforward to make your inferences using price information.
So two things. The reason that I'm including these variables that generally are just known to be a little bit more inaccurate and not very reliable is because the projections for the US, like all these projections are, they come out of a commodity linked model. So it's like a general equilibrium model that's run. So if ending stocks are unreliable, if total consumption is unreliable, that means that the US yield, area harvested, they are also going to incur or like absorb some of that inaccuracy, and then that inaccuracy is going to go back to the US specific level forecast that they have like domestically. So that's why including these here, the main reason is not to say that if I'm looking at the ending stock projections, my stock market decisions, I should be very, like nobody uses it for the purposes, but to include these and the level of inaccuracy or the scale of bias in these variables and try to minimize them, because it is a trickle-down effect. The international projections have, that means that the US domestic projections have bias. That means that the US domestic agricultural recommendations are going to come from inaccurate data. So that's the reason these are used. Price is not used is because price is not available at the international level for projections. And price is generally like internationally not protected in that long of a scale anyway. We have farm price for the USDA domestic baseline projections, but that is farm price for each of the crops separately. And I try to do that, but then the fact that there's an equilibrium model, which I'm trying to say has specific aspects, like that part will be separate from the main story. But it's an interesting idea to consider price as well. Thank you.
And then you can compare.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Very interesting, but I like somehow in my head, I still have a problem to wrap around. Because the starting point was to calculate the distance of like the train, somehow like the two variables together from two different countries. How do we distinguish the scenario when actually there was hurricane going on versus actually the same train, I don't know, because of global technology advancement and some things that like they move together like you for example, now like over a long run. How do we distinguish these two?
Yes, great question. So the projection series difference is like the main difference that I'm using here, right? But I'm just to quantify whether that distance is the right distance, whether these projections are actually similar or not. I use the historical data that's available to construct like a measure of similarity, like a baseline of similarity to compare my distances to. So that like here, that's the triangles in these figures here. That's the true difference using the true historical data of projections of these regions. So like that data only has 20 years from 2002 or 20 like 19 to 20. So that only has 19 years of data, and just using that 19 years of historical data to compute this actual distance between the two regions, the series of two regions. And that is why I'm able to separate this like true correlation with unnecessary correlation. Like I'm able to separate where hurting is rational versus where it's not rational.
So what's the country? Is it
US.
Oh, US. Did you try other?
Yes, I'm not presenting them here, but I tried Brazil and China, and
other resources.
mostly like the error results remain similar to the US. For other, what's interesting to note is like for corn, when I specifically use Brazil as the benchmark, it seems like making the projections slightly more closer to Brazil would reduce errors. So I see the opposite thing for US, like US going away from the US's trend is going to reduce errors, but for Brazil, going a little closer is it's a correlation, it's an association, it's not a causal relation. The reason I don't bank on those results a lot is because if you move away from US, it's highly likely anyway that you will be moving closer to maybe some other major global producers, or like you'll be somewhere in the middle. If these are two series, they have different trends and I end up in the middle. I move away from one, I move closer to the other, the error is lower because I'm closer to the area. So that's why like I just like I talk about that in the paper, but I haven't presented them here. Yeah.
So I see interesting result in your the graph that is the from the beginning and the last. That's I mean goes together. But can you explain a little bit more why? I mean why it is like in between. Go back to the another graph and see was yeah. So the rising, what might be the kind of given economic reasons or why that you see that kind of trend?
There are not a lot of economic reasons. The reasons are when projections are made, most focus is there's a lot of focus on where they are beginning and where they're ending. So the starting point for any projection series comes from that country's data. It comes from that country's specific like committee that has information about what political and economic situation in that country looks like. And then there are meetings that adjust the projections before they're finally released publicly. And the adjustment process mostly focuses on like where we're starting, where we're beginning, and what the overall kind of thing looks like. So that's why my guess here is I don't like know the entire process. We don't see it like a black box for us. We just have the public figures. But my guess is that in the middle, the true information is depicted more. In the start and end, the focus is higher on being closer to the global expectations. Like if global production is expected to be at a certain number, or it's not even expected, it's like if the global projection is required to be at a certain number at the end, as the end that gets the more focus of adjustment. Like you just say that the trend line, instead of here, it should go here. Instead of here, it should go here. You don't exactly change all of the data points and all of the projections. You mainly focus on like, okay, let's do this. Let's tinker with this a little bit so that we have a more cohesive story at the end. That's my hunch.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody.
For moderating.
Thank you, everybody who joined online and who joined in person. We are ending our session perfectly on time, so yeah, you go and enjoy your coffees now. Thank you. Do I leave the recording on here? What do I do with
I think
this?
they said that you
Yeah.
like just end,
Just end the share screen.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
And, but I think it's a trying to make it. You are. Producers, you are in the way. To more.
yeah, I have that also. Really like it stuff. It's not here, right?
No, it's not there.
I mean, also like, as starting like a price analyst of commodity, you should learn storage model.
Yeah, but the storage mode can give you a nice framework in order to understand the relations. You have errors in the relations, and possibly the errors are not in relation. This is total by possible, with good understanding of those how stocks gymnastics.
Yeah.
That would be a nice frame. So.
I will come back to you. but-
Yeah, I would be.
Прекрасно, знаешь, что это are you representing this issue?
It's just like. my-
Mexico.
Where you at?
What do you, what's up?
Very nice. I'll be using this photo.
I studied in Wyoming, actually.
What's that?
I studied in Wyoming,
Really? No?
Carams.
When did you graduate?
2019, I guess.
Okay. You didn't play soccer.
No.
That's right. Who'd you work with?
Joe Alvarez and David Allen.
Okay. So energy, resources.
Biodiversity.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, AgriCon, I've been serving on committees more these days. The project Sasha.
Is he here? I saw him like he
He was
was
like, sure. Oh, here in the conference.
Yeah.
Oh, he does. Yeah. Unless they offer good beer, which they don't. so.
I saw him on the list, that's why I was wondering. But I think someone is. posting a post.
Yeah, closer. Okay, how do you do this? You got. Yeah, you should stop.